Hello, and welcome back to Black Doctors Speak, brought to you by African American Wellness Project. Please visit us online and follow us on all social media platforms. Today, we are talking about colon cancer awareness. March is Colon Cancer Awareness Month, and so we want to definitely dive into this topic because this affects our community unproportionately way too many times, which is just awful, and it's getting younger and younger. So I would like to welcome my guest, Arkell Cox. Welcome.
Hello, Dr. Renee. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming with chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So Arkell is a expert in this, not even by choice. She didn't go to med school like me. She has a story that I think that will really resonate with the listeners and will help you to help your patients, help friends and family to know what to do because we recently Chadwick Boseman's wife was on the Today Show recently talking about his journey, and so I want you to tell us your story.
Okay. Well, every story is different, but it's the same,
Yes.
unfortunately, if that makes sense, right? And so, unfortunately, I became a very young widow. My husband passed away of stage 4 colorectal cancer at the age of 40, 2 days after his 40th birthday. And
Jesus.
it's been 13 years now, but it still feels like yesterday because I've said like time and time again, no one has to die of colon cancer, right? I call it the
I say the
cowardly
exact same
cancer.
thing.
Right, right. It's a cowardly cancer because if you don't know it's there, then it gets to the stage where then now we have a problem. But if our men and women can go and get a colonoscopy without having to go through all the red tape, we can find these polyps. We can remove these polyps before they become very cancerous and take over your body.
Well, I have to say this real quickly. You said your husband was 40 for 2 days.
Yes,
So normally, for the people that are listening or watching, you don't have colonoscopies until you're 50. But
correct.
they have recently, as in the last 10 years, they've changed it to 45 because actually I'll be 50 this year and I had mine at 45, but they did change it at 45. And since they changed it, most insurance companies have jumped on and they're okay with 45. But your husband
Correct.
wasn't even that age. So what
Correct. And
signs,
think about
symptoms? Yeah,
well, just think about this. So 13 years ago, that wasn't a thing, right?
right.
And so you had to go to your doctor, even if you had a family history, which my husband does not. His mother and father are both in their 80s and they're alive and healthy today. So it was just one of those things. And so us telling the doctors we want a colonoscopy, it wasn't something that was customary at that point in time.
Right.
And so we actually got 40,000 signatures in a matter of 2 months, and I've advocated. I've went to Capitol Hill. I've gone to say, listen, our men and women are dying of this disease and they don't have to. Let us just get the colonoscopies. And so, to tell you a little bit more of my story, when this happened, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer. In a matter of 3 months, he had passed away, right? Took him to New York Presbyterian Hospital, one of the finer institutions here in the United States, in the country. And we've got an amazing care there. But because he didn't fit the criteria for colon cancer, that was the last thing they wanted to test him for. And I had to really get the patient advocate in the hospital. I had to get my own patient advocate, and we had to advocate his cause, his case. And I said, I want the colonoscopy. And lo and behold, we got the colonoscopy after being in the hospital for 2 weeks.
Oh my
He had
goodness.
stage 4 colorectal cancer. And they said, you know what? We understand that you guys have businesses, you have a family, and your husband's a pretty big deal. You need to make arrangements because he'll be gone in 3 months. And then he walked off and all chipper and left me there holding my hand, my head in my hand, wondering, did he just say what I think he said? This man has 2 young children, 7 and 14. He has these businesses that he is building. What do you mean he's going to be gone in 3 to 4 months? And so said, unfortunately, my husband did pass away 3 months later. And since then, myself and my children, my family members, we have made it a point that no one has to die of this cowardly cancer. I have paid for colonoscopies. I founded a foundation for him, the Diamond Cox Colon Cancer Foundation. We pay a tuition to two two scholars that go to his alma mater from when he went to school in Brooklyn. And so I give back to Bishop Lachlan. Two students get free tuition. That's from his foundation. If there's anything to do with colon cancer, it may be your mortgage. You may need food on the table. You may need to pay a tuition. I don't care what it is, Dr. Renee, I'm paying it if your family has been affected by this colon cancer. I've taken friends, family, strangers to get a colonoscopy because I think that people have this misconception. When my husband died, I was 41, and I was very, very adamant that everybody's going to get a colonoscopy around me. So I myself went to get a colonoscopy, and I had to, as you know, and being a physician, you know that I had to figure it out because I didn't have any signs to get this colonoscopy. But I didn't want to be a hypocrite and say to you, you're constipated, you have blood in your stool, you feel like you have indigestion, all these things that are signs that we don't talk about. How am I going to tell you get a colonoscopy if I didn't know what it was, if I
Right.
hadn't done it myself? So I got the colonoscopy and I said, oh, this is actually going to help me convince people to do this, because when they do this, it's the best 7 minutes of sleep that you're ever going to have, right? So
And the
you
quickest 5 pounds I ever lost.
correct. The quickest, before you know it, you're cleaned out. You're just like, you wake up, they're telling you, what is your name? Or count down. I'm still counting down. When I wake up, they said, no, baby, it's over. I'm like, oh, okay, great. I love this. And so that actually gave me a greater insight to say to people, you have to get this done. And I will tell you, there's hundreds of that. Like, I'm not kidding you. And we had this discussion offline before. Thousands of pictures that I could do without of people's colonoscopies where they're saying, Arkell, we got this polyp removed and I can live my life. I went back to work. I played golf. I took the kids to soccer. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. You continue with your life. But if you don't get that care, if we don't advocate for each other, with each other, then lives are lost.
Yeah. And I think the other problem is that, especially with men, they're so worried about the colonoscopy. It's not that big of a deal. If
It is
you're
not.
asleep, it's not that big of a deal. And, I actually spoke to a young man who had no idea about colonoscopy. He just knew about Cologuard. And I'm like,
Mm,
I said, the
mm,
thing with that Cologuard is that it'll let you know if you have cancer. But wouldn't you prefer have a colonoscopy so they could see that you have a polyp in there that could
okay.
become cancer one day and take
Yeah.
that out, and then you
And
don't have
remove
to
it. And remove it. And so, you know what? When you say Cologuard, and I will tell you a funny story about that. I was working with a hospital in Brooklyn, and that particular hospital, we said, okay, how do we get this out to the community? It's an underserved community. I said, give me the Cologuards. I called my friend who works at, American Cancer Society. I said, give me some Cologuards kits. I'm going to get them somewhere. It'll give me some kind of, thorough, through way to get them into the hospital. And it's a beginning, but it's not what we want. We want them to get in there, get the colonoscopy, get the polyps removed if there's some, and get educated. There's nobody educating you behind the Cologuard. It's a pathway.
right.
It's a
Yeah.
pathway, right? And so, and that's the other thing that I'm very passionate about. We must have these conversations at the dinner table. Right?
Hmm.
If your eyes are hurting or you're squinting, somebody's going to say, you need to go see the ophthalmologist because you need glasses, right?
Yep.
And why you don't say, oh, I'm constipated to your wife, and have the conversation, because now we can advocate. We can say, you know what, it's not a big deal. I have literally 7 months ago had to take one of my husband's friends to get a colonoscopy. He called me like it was a secret. Hey, yo, Ark, I got to talk to you about this thing. And I'm thinking, hey, I hadn't heard from you in a while. How are
Right.
you? But what is this thing? Colonoscopy. I think I need one. Okay, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Let's go do it. Right. And now this one particular friend who's very well known wants to have a conversation around it. How do we get other men to do what I did? Because it wasn't really a big deal after all. It's not. They didn't invade your privacy. They didn't violate you. Just cut it out. And he
Yeah.
had 4 polyps that had to be removed. And now he has to go back every 2 years opposed to
Okay.
5. But look at that. Just that simple. Just knowledge.
Yeah. And it's the thing is that I think people, and then it doesn't hurt. You don't feel anything. It's just so easy. The one thing I know, the other thing that people are very, very leery about is the prep. And the prep, it can be, I mean, I had these little 8-ounce bottles. It was nasty. I just took it to the head, drank them, and that was that.
But let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Before it was the Elmer's glue, I used to call it, right? It looked like
Yes, my
Elmer's glue.
mother, that's what she had. And I said, Lord, if I have to do that, I don't know.
I don't know if I'm going to do it, but we don't have that now. You have the little 6-ounce bottles, or they come in six,
Yeah.
4, 8, and you
Yeah.
take that. It tastes like very sweet syrup, and that's what I tell people. Just pretend it's Sprite. You go on and drink it, but guess what? Now there's a pill, right? So it's just, and somebody said to me, my insurance doesn't cover the syrupy thing that you're telling me. I only have to take 2 of those, and it doesn't cover it. And I said, well, how much is the insurance covering, and how much does it cost? It was $99. I said, but you went out, and I know you ate out dinner. You had dinner last night. Your bill was about $300-$400 because I was with you. But you can't spend $99 to get your behind checked out. Where's our priorities?
Right.
What are we
Right.
saying? And so I said, you want me to give you the $100? But that wasn't the case. We were
Right.
able to get them to get the prep. They drank it. It was fine. And so that's also the conversation that we have to make light of it. We have to obviously make light of the whole situation and let people know that it's not as bad. Just be grateful we don't have to drink the Elmer's glue that everybody else was drinking. Because I was like, what is
That thing was
this?
huge. It wasn't
It was
even
enormous. It was like a gallon of this
gallon.
very thick, milky,
It was like
pasty
milk
kind of thing.
magnesia. It was
It was
gross. There's no
exactly.
way.
But we're no
But
longer
yeah, so
there. We've
it has
evolved.
come a long way, thank the Lord. And then I did mine. Mine was scheduled for Monday morning. So therefore, the day that I really wasn't eating was like, I think it was Sunday.
Mhm.
I just drank bone broth, and it wasn't that big of a deal. And Monday after we finished, I could eat, and I was like, it was not that bad.
Well, I commend you because having these conversations allows the insight, allows someone who's thinking about it and they don't know because they're thinking about what their grandfather did or their dad. It's not that anymore. We've come so far. Even with a colonoscopy, the risks are so much lower now, right? For
Mhm.
infection, for punctures, all those things have changed. And so we really need to make this a general conversation around the dinner table. We should have these conversations with our children, with our
Yeah.
husbands, our brothers.
And it's colon. There's not 20,000 cancers that are avoidable, but colon cancer is avoidable. And we need to pay attention to the fact that it's avoidable. And
Correct.
so, was there any symptoms now that you think about that your husband had, and you guys might not, that he might not have told you, or you missed or something later on, and that's when you figured out, oh, that's what that was?
Unfortunately, still a mystery to me
Okay.
today, to be honest with you. Dave was 6'4", 240 pounds, extremely healthy, very active, was a social drinker, didn't smoke. We cannot figure it out. Where did
Okay.
this cancer come from? Right? And his mother and father, as I said, they're alive today,
Mhm.
healthy, fine. Neither one of them had any form of cancers. And so we just don't know. We don't
Okay.
know. And there were no signs. It wasn't like he just became constipated. It really, and I'm a nosy wife. I'm that wife that if my husband's in the bathroom in the toilet bowl and I got something to tell you, I'm coming in. I'm
Right.
coming in. Hey, babe, I got to tell you something. There's no privacy. There's not like, oh, give me a second. I'm literally the knocking on the door. I'm coming in. I want to know what's going on because I got to tell you something. And so for me, it's just like, seriously, I didn't miss anything. He didn't
Right.
have anything going on. There was nothing that I could say, oh, and we talked about this. How did we not see this coming? How was we able to prepare for this? We weren't. We
Mhm.
weren't. But we're going to make sure that the next person is able. The
Right.
next person is aware. The next person knows what to ask. The next person knows that if they go to get a colonoscopy and the doctor said, you're too young, or there's no
Mhm.
family
Mhm.
history, we know the verbiage now to tell the doctors and to make sure that you're going to get your colonoscopy.
Yeah. And and I know you know this, but also for everyone watching and listening, make sure that if you find out you have a first line relative, mother, father, sister, brother that has gets a colon cancer diagnosis, if a parent, you need to get tested 10 years before they were diagnosed. So if they were diagnosed at 40, then at 30, that's when you have your first colonoscopy. And there's 2 cancers that we do that kind of math for it's prostate cancer and colon cancer. So it's very important. Like you said, we need to have these conversations. The
Correct.
problem with us is that so and so died and no one ever knows what happened to them because our family didn't want to talk about it. No, we need to talk about these things. We need to have the history.
You literally just touched on something that drives me crazy, right? I'm Caribbean, and so in
You
the
and me
Caribbean,
both, of course,
right? We
and
we yep, we've talked about this. Nobody knows what your great grandmother
nope.
or auntie passed from. It's taboo. They don't want to talk about it. Well, now I think times have changed with social media and the internet. You can find out so much more. So there's really no excuse. We definitely have to let people know if there's a family member that has had this disease and has passed away 10 years prior, you need to make sure that your children, yourself, you're tested
Yes,
because it is so important. Then again, we can look for those markers, right? We can
exactly.
make sure, correct. We can make sure that we are ahead of this thing because no one has to die from this cowardly cancer.
And you know what I say? I say that family meals like holidays are always great times to have these conversations. So look, we're coming up on Resurrection Sunday soon,
There
Palm
we go.
Sunday, and then
Correct.
Resurrection Sunday. A lot of
Correct.
our families in our community will be getting together. Great time to have conversations about health history. Your family health history is
I love
so
that.
important. The doctors, if they can help you a whole lot more if you give them more information. It's
Correct.
when they are pulling at straws that they can't find stuff and it's a needle in the haystack, but it probably wasn't a needle in the haystack if you just gave them the information that Auntie so and so had such and such. You
Correct. And
have
don't
to
be
have
afraid to ask
somebody
the questions.
that.
Don't be afraid. I tell people all the time, get nosy about what you need to be nosy about, right?
Right.
Don't be nosy about whose husband or man is doing what. That's not what you need to know.
No,
Sit your family down and have these conversations. And we don't even, Dr. Renee, we don't even have to wait until it's at a big family gathering.
no, we
Make a
don't.
list. Make a
Yes,
list. Have it with your own children at the dinner table. And that's what once we have those conversations and it becomes normal, we've got to make it the new normal. Once it becomes normal, there we go. Then
yeah.
it's no longer taboo. It's no longer taboo for our men, especially our younger men. It's
Hmm.
being put in their minds that, "Oh, I don't want a colonoscopy. I don't want
Yeah.
nobody messing my butt." Hey man, you don't even know that thing is so small. And by the time that camera goes up there, like I said, they're counting you down.
You don't even know what's going on.
Correct.
You're
But
knocked out.
exactly. And you've lived to tell about it. Let's not just do it in the secret. Let's talk about it. Let's post. I got a colonoscopy today. You know what? And thank God they found two polyps, but I'm fine. I'll see you in 5 years. Why can't we have those conversations?
That's so important because we need to make sure that we normalize, just like we need to normalize mental health conversations, we need to normalize these other conversations because it is awful, the taboo that has come with colonoscopies, particularly when it comes to men. It is awful. But
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
I mean,
I,
because in our community, the whole, unfortunately, alternative lifestyles are still very taboo,
yes.
unfortunately, for a lot
Yeah.
of men. And so I think that's why. And so they equate that. And I don't know why they equate the colonoscopy with sex, but they do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it really is a problem. And then also, right now, what we have to worry about is our young people do not eat the way that we did when we were younger.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we keep telling you colon cancer is preventable. It's
Preventable.
preventable because you can have, there's no, you have to eat a balanced diet.
Correct.
And there's no, and that you'd be amazed how many people don't realize you are supposed to have a bowel movement at least once a day.
Correct. After every
And
meal.
it blows my mind how many people
Yeah.
are like, oh, I
Yeah.
just once a week. No, that's
Your
not
plumbing
normal.
is not working. It's
Exactly.
clogged up. That's how, when I speak in schools, Dr. Renee, that's what I tell them. I said, just imagine your sink, right? For the ladies, it's a better analogy because you
Yeah.
imagine your sink, you wash your hair clogs up the sink, right? And so that's your plumbing. Your plumbing is clogged up if you're not going to the bathroom after every meal or at least once or twice a day. You
Yes.
should. And then I have to get into the gross part of it. It should float. It shouldn't sink.
Right.
Like it's not healthy. Oh, does it even matter? Yes. But these are conversations we need to make normal.
Yes.
Normal. Because there's
And you
nothing
need to,
wrong with it.
you need to look in the toilet. You need to look at the toilet tissue. If you are
Correct.
bleeding from your rectum, You need to make certain, you need to talk to the doctor to make sure they're not hemorrhoids.
Correct.
And if it's hemorrhoids, you need to deal with that. But if it's not hemorrhoids, then they need to figure out what is going on.
It's a more serious issue.
Exactly.
Correct.
So you need, and fiber is so important, and everybody is low on fiber. Men, women, everyone is. So if you, honestly, I feel like everyone should take a fiber supplement. I use Benefiber. That's what's in my water every day in my bottle of water that I drink. I use Benefiber. That's what keeps me regular. And that's what I
flaxseed. You could just sprinkle some flaxseed on your salad, on your yogurt. Just
oatmeal, yogurt,
water.
Yes.
You know, just be consistent. It's so easy. But to your point, the younger generations, they're so it's instant gratification. So they're on the move. They're going. But it's our job. It's our responsibility to lead them. You know, teach them. This is it, and lead them to the water. Make them drink the water. They have to. You know,
and green leafy vegetables. I mean, there's so many places you can get fiber. Oats. There's so many places you can get fiber, but you need to make sure you're getting that fiber. There is, I think it's 35 to 45 grams of fiber you're supposed to have per day. And I'm telling you, if you sat there and calculated through a day, you would see that you're not getting that. Therefore,
and your body needs it.
Your body needs it, and you need to start, you know, and you'll feel very different once if you're lacking in fiber and you start increasing your fiber. Oh, you'll notice the difference.
Correct.
Right away.
Even the way you move, your energy levels. It's all part of the lifestyle. I had that conversation earlier, believe it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really important that we understand that, you know, there is so much we can do with our diet. We need to make certain that we're eating a balanced meal. I don't eat perfect all the time, but I make sure that I do it in moderation so that I make sure I have everything covered, because I know that this is avoidable. So I want to make sure we can avoid this.
Right.
I don't have to go back for 10 years for my colonoscopy. So in 5 years, I'll go back. But, and then I've been encouraging people as well. And the people I've encouraged, they got the same news, 10 years for them too. I said, see, wasn't that big of a deal. You go, get it done, and now you're good. I tell people, even if you do Cologuard and it comes out with a positive, then you have to go have the colonoscopy anyway. So why
waste your time? But here's something else that you said. I just want to touch on that. You said you know, everything was fine. You don't have to go back for 10 years. But in the event, in that space of time, in that 10 years, should you develop new symptoms, don't ignore them, because the doctor said, oh, come back in 10 years. Because I've had that as well. Oh, they told me I'm fine. But you're displaying symptoms that's saying that you're not fine. So obviously something has happened in the last 3 years, and that is possible. Just don't go on that, I'll see you in 10. You know, always be mindful. Listen to your body. Your body's going to talk to you, and it's going to tell you way before you really start to acknowledge and own into it. That's why it's so key that we don't ignore the signs, the headaches, you know, if you're constipated. These things are things your body is talking to you, telling you, pay attention.
Yeah. And like she said, drinking water is so important, because that can also contribute to constipation as well. If you don't have enough water in your system, then the plumbing is not going to work to get it out of your body. Correct. So, and honestly, I don't know anyone that wants to be constipated. It is not a comfortable feeling. No. I had a medication that caused it. And when I tell you, it was like 3 days, and I was calling them every day. Help! I have got to take something. This is going to drive me nuts. And so I ended up taking magnesium citrate, which, you know, will flush you.
Correct.
And so I was like, I said, how much am I supposed to take? They go, just take the whole bottle. The whole bottle. So I took it to the head, and they were like, you're going to feel so much better. And they were right.
And you did. And you did.
I could live like that for another 5 minutes. I was like, no, I go every morning before I start my day. Like, I can't, this is not normal. This is hurting. So,
and that's nature. That's how your body is telling you, I'm healthy. Everything's working.
Exactly. And that's how I know. And so you have to know you have to really understand your body. And that's what we're saying. Look in the toilet, look at the toilet tissue. You need to pay attention to all these things, because unfortunately with colon cancer, by the time they finally find it, it is always way down the road.
And it could have been avoided.
And it could have been avoided. So this is why it's so important. And I mean, I don't know if they're gonna, and actually I've heard that they might change it to 40 for the colonoscopies. I've heard.
I would be so thrilled if it does.
Yes. And I think, and I hate to say it, but unfortunately, I think the reason it got changed to 45 is because other people were starting to get affected earlier too. Because if it's just us, it's not going to move. But when it
Correct.
becomes others, then the needle moves.
When my husband was going through radiation and chemo, there were men in their 20s. There were, I mean, that I've spoken to. I spoke to them that year. It was, I think, 172,000 new cases. That was 13 years ago. Are you
Wow.
kidding me? That's ridiculous. That's too many.
Wow. And so I
Under
will
the
tell
age
you,
of 40.
and I will tell you now, colon cancer has surpassed lung and breast cancer, I think, for Black
Correct.
people. So,
Yeah.
and that is just awful because we keep telling you this is one that is actually preventable.
And that's what, as I said, if I could scream it from every mountaintop, I will. And I will
Yeah.
continue to have these discussions because no one has to die from colon cancer. That
Mhm.
cowardly cancer doesn't have to be a part of our
Sure.
stories
Exactly.
anymore. Correct.
Can you please tell people how to find you, how to find the foundation, and all that good stuff?
Well, again, my name is Arkell Cox. I'm on Instagram as Arkell Cox or Ark's Angel. The foundation is called the Diamond Cox Colon Cancer Foundation. And again, all proceeds, anything that I do that involves colon cancer, 100% of the proceeds goes to his foundation. And we are there to support the needs of families who have been affected by colon cancer, unfortunately.
Thank you so much. And we will definitely have that in the show notes. And thank you, everyone, for another episode of Black Doctors Speak. And we will see you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.